This is the Energy Manager's Playbook from Save on Energy, empowering Ontario's energy managers to create real impact in their organizations. I'm Jay Mullin.
So in terms of the analogy I like to use to describe energy management, it's like trying to cross a fog-covered lake. You know there's a shore on the other side, but you don't know exactly how you're going to get there. And you can envision that there's these stepping stones that you can take to get you across the lake. But because of the fog, you can really only see the one or maybe two that's right in front of you.
Many times, energy managers know where they want to go and where they want to take their organization. Where it gets tricky is when we aren't exactly sure how to get there, or if our organizations are willing to follow along. Katelyn Poyntz' journey is much like that. As the director of the Project Engineering, Energy and Sustainability teams at Unity Health Toronto, she could see the vast potential of how energy efficiency and sustainability could serve their sprawling hospital network. But the path to making that a strategic priority, well, that vision wasn't clear. In this episode, taking it one step at a time.
So when I first started, this was prior to Unity integrating with our three main hospital sites that we have now. I was a project manager that was brought in to actually develop the infrastructure renewal program at our St. Michael's Hospital. And as a project manager, I became aware of the Save on Energy incentive program, where we could do things within our projects, such as install LED lights or VFDs on pumps and get incentives in return. And it seemed like a win-win situation. And I loved the idea of capitalizing on making improvements that we could continue to implement across the board. And that was really how it all began. And then it just grew from there.
And what convinced you that there was value in that beyond just cost savings of energy? Or did you see value beyond just saving some money on utility bills?
I always feel that there's more that we can be doing, and there's all these co-benefits, right? So, when you install a new piece of infrastructure, you're getting new equipment, but you're also getting the opportunity to do performance improvements and efficiencies in how we operate. And then that really trickles down even to our facilities team. Now we're not having to do as much reactive maintenance. We can be more proactive. And so there really is a cascading effect in terms of the impacts across so many different projects and elements of those projects.
Yeah. And you mentioned how Save on Energy project incentives helped you get started. Can you also touch on how their Energy Manager program helped you take another step?
Absolutely. Yeah. Having that funding enabled us to hire our first energy manager and start to build the energy team, which one of the first steps was building that foundation for the data, as well as continuing to work on some of the smaller projects and the incentives that were available to us. And then we were able to take those incentives and reinvest them into purchasing new equipment in terms of flow meters and power meters so that we could gather more specific data and really drill down into some of the opportunities that we felt there may be.
So now you're starting to find some of those more opportunities. How did you prioritize which were most worthwhile to pursue?
I think it's really important that, especially when you first start down the road of energy management, there are a plethora of opportunities and you can easily get distracted because really they all have their benefits. So in order to actually accomplish something, I felt very strongly that we needed to just pick three things and execute on those. So we would look at what the data was telling us and then also speaking with our facilities teams and getting their feedback on what things were working or not working for them, what performance challenges they might be having or maintenance challenges they might be having, and then layering all of those things together to really filter down the list. And also, when we were first starting, we knew that we had to focus on things that were going to have a payback period to sell those concepts, to sell those projects and get funding for them. So we set ourselves a limit of a 2 to 3 year payback, and we wouldn't really look at business cases that were beyond that. Mm-hmm. So that was some of our filter criteria that we used to pick what those three focus areas would be.
And when you're setting those priorities, did you see those as part of a larger plan to get to that endpoint of integrating sustainability and energy management into the hospital's operations? Like, did you have that sort of laid out to begin with?
I think the short answer is no. I didn't know 100% where we were going. I just knew what we could action at that moment in time. And it didn't seem like a bad idea. So let's take that step. And then once you start taking those steps, it becomes a little bit more clear what the next step or opportunity might be. And we were able to, document, communicate, and share our successes that we had started making. And that built momentum around the program and enabled us to move forward and continue to really build on the organizational level of support that we already had fundamentally.
Were there any of those steps that you took that didn't quite work out?
So when we were building these business cases and really trying to compare current operations versus what the new state of operations would look like, we learned a lot about what some of our tolerance levels were for various components. In terms of increase to operational costs, we determined that wasn't really something the hospital was able to take on. And so, okay, now there's a new parameter that goes in. Not only are we looking at, as I mentioned previously, our criteria was a 2-year payback. Now we're looking at, okay, no operational increases. And then through the questions that we were asking around proprietary equipment and how does that impact our maintenance of those solutions and the sustainability of them long term. If we have to fly someone in from overseas to maintain the equipment, then it's not necessarily something that is going to have a sustainable future.
So as you were going through these one-off projects and identifying what the next project was, did you feel the need to get like a broader energy strategy in place for the organization?
I think that part of energy management that's really important and sometimes overlooked is the behavior and the engagement of the organization and the people, because that's a really important factor when it comes to implementing these types of projects. So at some point, I recognized that, we have a very large organization, over 10,000 plus employees. And how do we really engage with everybody in the organization and not just the project managers and the facilities teams alone, but everybody? And that's where we were really looking to revitalize our sustainability committee. And as part of that revitalization, I had proposed that we needed to hire a sustainability project manager to really focus on building that culture and engagement across the organization. And so it was at that point that I had put forward a proposal and built what is now the 4 pillars of our sustainability strategy around energy, redevelopment, culture and engagement, and then what I had called at the time procurement, but maybe better known as supply chain, because hospitals, about 80% of our emissions or more is attributed to our scope 3 or supply chain emissions. So building a relatively straightforward approach and with 4 pillars that are fairly easy to remember is something that's pretty important when you're building a message or building a strategy. You don't want to have to remember anything too complicated. So that's where we started, and it's still what we're working with today. It doesn't mean that it won't evolve over time, but part of it's just picking a line in the sand and going with it and evolving as you go.
And this was something that you saw the need for and decided to write and come up with those 4 pillars and presented it within the organization. When did you see it starting to get some traction?
I think that to get the traction, you need to be consistent. You need to continue to move forward. And so, just because you present something once doesn't mean that now it's going to stick. So how do we keep showing up with the same message or a consistent message? And we started developing a structure for our annual sustainability report and published that. Now people are reading the report and they know about the report, and people I talk to external to the organization have seen that. And then when the ECDM plan was due, which is the Energy Conservation Demand Management Plan that organizations are required to publish, we wrote that, but we renamed it the Sustainability Plan and made it our 5-year sustainability plan, including the elements of the ECDM that we're required to fulfill. You can't underestimate the power of publishing something in writing. It really goes a long way. And over time, people get to know that, oh, I'll reach out to Katelyn because she's the sustainability person. And that's really something that made me think, okay, we've made a dent here in this and people know about us now.
And it's interesting how important the word choice can impact how it's presented. And you saw that as very important or having that impact internally?
I think that it definitely does. But another reason why I wanted to do this was, Unity Health, one of our values is inclusivity. And so when we had this developed energy team and then I brought on the sustainability PM, I really wanted them to feel as if they were one team together and that we can't be doing things in silos and make sure that we're being collaborative with our approach. It wasn't a sustainability PM doing events and communications and then the energy team doing energy projects. And so that was actually the real reason why I started with, okay, we're sustainability now. And then it just seemed to be a big benefit in terms of talking about the work that we're doing across the organization.
Can you recall any specific moments or milestones where you thought, okay, we're making real progress here?
It's funny because I probably don't take as much time as I should to reflect on where we started, how far we've come. And so there are a couple things that really stand out to me that have given me opportunity to reflect. One is when I see people on my team presenting the work that we do. I attended a webinar the other day where one of our prior energy managers was talking about the work that we have done and the next steps in terms of climate resiliency. And I went, wow, who are they talking about? And then I realized it was us and the work that we had done. And it really gave me that moment to pause and reflect. And then the other one, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, was when I get direct outreach from people that maybe I don't even work a lot with, but have crossed paths, whether it's from the strategy team, the VPs of different departments, or our CEO himself reaching out because they know that I'm doing work in this area. To me, that means, okay, again, people know what's going on and they think of me when it comes to sustainability. And so that's another indicator where I go, okay, we're making progress and our work is being heard.
And what do you see as some of the most significant changes at Unity Health since you started down this path?
It's been a really interesting evolution. When we started with energy management, it was really just about kilowatt hours saving. At some point, that shifted to demand management and smoothing our peak consumption in order to help the grid. And now we've really made an even larger shift towards emissions, and not just carbon, but emissions holistically for healthcare organizations. As you know, we have anesthetic gases as well that we emit, which is not just in carbon. So to see this shift between something that was very transactional in terms of kilowatt hours and consumption to a more holistic approach of emissions from our entire organization, it kind of went from how I would describe in my engineering mind a two-dimensional situation to a three-dimensional one.
And in that context of changes that you experienced, what have you seen in terms of outcomes when you look at energy use at Unity Health?
So we are seeing a reduction in our consumption. I think the challenge going forward will be to maintain that with the redevelopment activities that are planned for our sites, because in most cases, although we are demolishing older facilities that may not be as efficient, we are adding more square footage. So having this roadmap as a baseline is actually really important because we're able to use that to calculate what does our intensity for emissions and energy use need to be for these new sites in order to not add to our emissions total.
So I'm just curious, what are you looking forward to tackling next?
I think the thing that just excites me most is every time I dig into something new, I discover more synergies and more benefits that we can get from implementing. Maybe pie in the sky ideas, but thinking about how we can, as an organization, really contribute to our community and potentially right some of the inequities or support resolution of those inequities within our communities. Some simple concepts around food gardens, as well as respite spaces for climate resilience purposes, maybe even sharing energy. Our hospitals generate heat 24/7 around the clock all the time. So it would be great to be able to look at opportunities to co-develop spaces. Those are maybe more long-term visionary aspirational goals. And we can't certainly just make the leap to that right away, but those are some of the opportunities to continue to explore.
Right, and keep taking those steps towards those outcomes potentially.
Yes. The analogy I like to use to describe energy management, it's like trying to cross a fog-covered lake. you know there's a shore on the other side, and you can envision that there's these stepping stones that you can take to get you across the lake. But because of the fog, you can really only see the one or maybe two that's right in front of you. And that's all you really need to know. You don't need to know where the rest of the stones are. Just step onto the first stone that you can see. And as you take that step, the other stones that are fog covered will start to appear.
As you've come so far towards that far shore, are you getting a better sense of where those next stones are? Or is that fog lifting at all? I guess what I'm asking.
No, I don't know if it is. It's, I think it's one of the things I do love about this work and this industry is that it is a constantly evolving and very dynamic field. I learn new things every day. I am by no means an expert. I just know that there is another side. It's a bit about having faith, I suppose, that you're going to get there at some point. And maybe you never get there. Maybe that's the whole point, is that systems and people and relationships, they evolve over time, and it's a constant change.
Energy management isn't about making one giant leap. It's about taking small, steady steps forward, even when the path ahead isn't completely clear. Katelyn's story at Unity Health is a great example of how progress builds over time. She started with one project, reinvested savings, and used each success to open new opportunities. From there, it wasn't just about energy savings. It became about smarter operations, stronger collaboration, and ultimately, embedding sustainability into the organization's culture. For any energy manager looking to make an impact, remember, look at the step you can take today. Don't worry about having the whole roadmap figured out. Every success, no matter how small, can reveal the next opportunity on your path forward. Thanks to Katelyn Poyntz and Unity Health. That's it for this episode. As always, I'd love to hear about what challenges and victories you've faced in your energy management career. You can email me. Just find the address in the show notes to this episode. And while you're there, tap the link to the Save on Energy website. There, you can learn more on how to improve your energy management practices. I'm Jay Mullin, and this is the Energy Manager's Playbook, a podcast from Save on Energy.